My name is Urs Stahill. I'm here, the curator of the Ai Weiwei exhibition. In my home area, I'm the director and curator of Photo Museum Winterthur in the city of Winterthur next to Zurich.
My name's Lucas Lai. I'm a Taiwanese American, and I started working for Weiwei in August of 2010 to prepare this exhibition for him.
I was first introduced to his black and white photographs, which he did in New York, through his gallerist, his main gallerist, Urs Meile, the gallerist from Lucerne in Switzerland, who has a big branch in Beijing, in that village where Ai Weiwei has his studio. He showed me 3-4 years ago black and white photographs, contact sheets of a lot of people in New York, Ai Weiwei in New York, etc. I looked at it and I wasn't so overwhelmed, because when you look at contact sheets, you have to pick out which is the good photograph, which is the less good photograph. You find then after a while out that maybe that's not so an important question. But I was curious enough to say, okay, I'd like to visit Beijing, I'd like to visit Ai Weiwei. I knew about him, I've visited the Documenta in 2007, I have seen his action at Kassel in Germany, where he brought 1,001 Chinese people to Kassel. And so I decided I'd like to visit Beijing. I'd like to visit that village where all the art scene is now. And I'd like to talk to Ai Weiwei to find out, can this be something for a photo museum? We are not a classic art museum or a classic contemporary museum, so can it be also for a photo museum like the Jeu de Paume, who is in the medias, not in paintings, not in sculpture, not in installation. So I went there in May 2009, and again in May 2010, twice, to visit Ai Weiwei, and to find out that this man is just crazy, that he's a maniac in taking photographs, that he has taken from 2005 to 2009 maybe 217,000 photographs, that he has documented his time in New York in 10,000 black and white photographs, not published until most recently, hidden for 10 or 15 years. So I found out that I'm sitting in front of a conceptual artist who uses photography every day, every second. When he would be in this interview situation like here now, he would be constantly photographing back. While being filmed, he photographs back. While being interviewed, he photographs back. You see that also in the blog photographs here. So he does not do one photograph, he does always 30 photographs, 40 photographs, 50 photographs. So you have kind of a filmic way of taking photographs. So after the second visit, I realized that is an incredible body of work. That has nothing to do with fine arts of photography, with the very finest print, like maybe in an exhibition of Kertész or an exhibition of Diane Arbus. It's not about that. It's about attitudes. Attitudes in life, attitudes in art, and using photography to express those attitudes. And that fascinated me a lot. So I thought, we absolutely have to make this show. And then I asked the Jeu de Paume to participate, to be partner of that. And so it was clear it is possible to make this show.
He's fine. I mean, he's in good health. Obviously, the situation is difficult, and I think it has obviously had an effect on the way he is, but I would say that overall he's still himself. He can leave his house, without any problem. He just cannot leave Beijing. So, but even moving around Beijing, he needs to check in with the authorities and say, I'm going to this restaurant to meet these people, and often they will follow him. So, or they will send someone to the restaurant. So he is being watched all the time. Yeah. But they do let him move and see people. I think Weiwei ultimately communicates what China is about in a lot of ways, since most of his work is related to China. And Weiwei provides people an opportunity to imagine a new reality and a different reality than the one that exists. I think that's his most succinct way I could put what he does. You know, he's an artist, but he does everything. So he'll do sculptures, he'll do architecture, he'll do installations, photography, furniture, anything. And he, you know, he's a social critic, he blogs, he writes, he'll do anything that interests him. Anything that I think will communicate. I mean, he's a communicator, he's all about communication. He wanted to leave Beijing because he didn't really feel like there was enough freedom or opportunity, I guess, for him there. I think it was a very important time for him. He became familiar with a lot of different artists. You know, he became familiar with Duchamp there, so that made a big impact on him. Warhol, all these other artists that he wasn't familiar with before, so it was a very interesting time for him. And I think his artwork is accessible because it is ultimately also the craftsmanship in the artwork is superb, you know. So a lot of his artwork, he himself does not make them. They are artisans that make the artwork. He comes up with the designs and he works with the artisans. So there's a finish to the artwork that is very, very precise and very beautiful. So I think for a lot of artists and collectors, they are drawn to that. You know, also just the materials that he chooses to use in, wood and marble, porcelain, traditional Chinese materials, and also done in a way that's very beautiful, but also very contemporary. So I think from an artistic standpoint, that would be why he is a great artist. Weiwei became a problem with the authorities after the Sichuan earthquake, really. And they decided to do a citizens' investigation to find out how many school children died because of the collapsed school buildings. So when he first tried to obtain a number from the government, he kept being rejected. They all said, this is, you know, private information. We don't give this kind of information. We don't have the number, blah, blah, blah. So he thought, well, this is ridiculous, you know, I mean, you have to be accountable, because part of the issue was that so many school buildings collapsed, whereas other buildings did not collapse. So it probably they thought was an issue of bad construction. So they decided to recruit a lot of people on the internet to help the investigation. So the whole group of people went all over the area, you know, door to door, knocked on people's doors, found out the names of the children that died, and compiled a list of all the children's names and age, you know. And then on the 1-year anniversary of the earthquake, they published this list on his blog of all the people who passed, all the children who passed away. And that was when he really got in trouble with the government. For him, nudity is just it's an example of a freedom of expression and also not hiding anything, you know. I think part of what his big critique about the government in China is that there is so much censorship and there is so much opaqueness. There's no transparency. You don't know who's responsible for what, who's doing what. So I think for him, nudity is just a way of showing that he has nothing to hide, and it's just a form of expression. So it's not a sexual thing. In New York, he took around 10,000, and then when he came back to Beijing, he probably took a few thousand more. And out of the blog photographs, the original blog archive had around 200,000 photographs. So clearly he himself has taken somewhere around 200-some thousand photographs. But most of them, the overwhelming majority are his blog photography, so after 2005. If he did not take these pictures, and even though he himself did not take these pictures, this is something that he had his videographer go out and record all of these things happening, maybe there would be no record of it at all. So then you're in a situation where all these years of history would just disappear. So it's more about keeping a record. He does it everywhere because I think he doesn't differentiate. He doesn't say, well, this culture is better than another, or this institution is better than any other. So it is just a way to make people think about, well, why do I necessarily think that the Eiffel Tower is the most beautiful thing, or it needs to be revered? It's not saying that it shouldn't be, but it makes you think. That is the real purpose of that series. I mean, he does it in front of his own work. He will give the middle finger to his own artwork. So it is really just a way to provoke people to think. I know often people don't really understand, and they think when they first see it, it's very offensive. But it is, if you step back and you think about it, then that's what it's really about. For sure, I think the fact that, especially after he was arrested, there was so much international press, that definitely has an impact. But it would be foolish to think that just because he's internationally renowned, it will keep him from being jailed. You know, there's plenty of very famous, I mean, if a Nobel Prize winner can be in jail, then anybody can be in jail, yeah. I think it's impossible to predict anything with the Chinese government. They will do what they want to do when they want to do it. So any kind of prediction is just, it doesn't mean anything. Of course, we hope that he will be able to move freely after June 22nd this year, but you never know. They make up the rules as they go along. I think Weiwei would say something to the effect of, when there is danger and you don't do anything, then the danger becomes greater.